All right, I'm letting him in.
All right, all right.
Coming in. This is his stage name.
No, I think he's on his wife's.
I know.
Hang on, I'm getting dialed in here.
No problem, Jack.
Yeah, you can
How's it
tell
going,
by the
Jack?
Hey
you can
there.
tell by the name there, by the person who runs things at our house here.
Yeah. The boss.
At least you know it. That's good.
Yeah, it's hard not to when it comes up as Leanne Cannon during Zoom meetings. Believe me, it's not the first time.
They're like, who did we invite to this thing?
Yeah.
You know,
It's good to see you, Canfield.
You too, Jack. It's been a minute. Great to see you. Happy to talk to you today.
Yeah, likewise. It was really funny when you had put this thing on here about a podcast. There's been several little podcast things that have happened where I'm like, it's a powerful medium, and with all that's going on in our business today, it's important to have an open walkie and to get the information out there.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole point of it, to just to get to hear the stories of people, because the main thing that I love is the backstories of everybody. Is like,
yeah,
how did you start? Because there's no one path. You could have the same position, and everyone comes from completely different paths, and their journey's different and everything. So
yeah, and it's good too. I mean, the show that Canfield and I work on, Jersey Shore, there's a lot of young people that come into that through PA positions or through coordinator places or whatever, and they're kind of always asking, like, and it's just really, it's so funny. The cliche is like, I'll ask them, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I want to direct.
Right.
And it's like, well, everybody wants to direct. I get it, but you're a PA. Like, you need to learn a lot before you can start directing. And it's good to have that goal, but to think that you're going to go from PA to director, that's a tough transition.
yeah. I've heard a lot of kids come out of film school and get so sour because they're like taking out trash, and it's like, well, you have to learn the ropes a little bit.
That's where we all started too, taking out trash and getting people coffee, getting people lunches, and I think we're all better for it, to be honest. And that gives you the opportunity to look at the whole set. Maybe be quiet a little bit. And I know that's, Jack, you probably can't imagine me being quiet, but like just looking around and seeing what everyone else is doing, and then going, oh, wait, I actually didn't know what a director did, or I didn't know what a producer did, or I didn't know what a director of photography was. And then you figure out what you want to do. And that takes years sometimes.
Yeah. What's funny to me is, I started I was a PA on Entertainment Tonight. I was an intern, and then they hired me. So I was doing it for free, and then they decided to pay me. But I would go to the red carpet events, and I would take the tripod, and we had to, reserve the best spot. So I'd get there at like noon for like a 5 o'clock red carpet event. And I sat there with that tripod for 5 hours, saving a space for the crew to show up, because obviously they didn't want to have the crew sitting there for 5 hours. So they'd send a PA. And so I always think back to that when people are like, oh, well, how'd you get to be a director? I was like, well, it started by sitting on a tripod for 5 hours waiting for the red carpet crew to show up. And, here I am. So, but the other really funny thing is, I was thinking about, I've thought a lot about, since we talked, Canfield, about doing this podcast, because there's like so much I want to get out there. What's really interesting to me is, the hours I work, like I'm there.
Yeah.
Like I'm there. Yep. And I've told several PAs, hey, on your day off, come into the booth. This is one of the few companies where you can hang out in the back of the booth and nobody's going to say, what the fuck are you doing here, kid? Get out. Mm-hmm. They'll look back and say, oh, that's a PA on your day off, watching and observing and trying to learn more. One guy has done it.
Wow.
And all the time I've done Jersey Shore, which has been 5 or 6 years.
How do you? I wish somebody had done that when I was coming up. That's ridiculous. How you don't take an advantage of that.
I don't think anyone ever gave me that offer. I mean, until I was a camera operator, and then you become more friendly with the directors, and then you could they're a little bit more approachable in the control room. But no one ever offered me that. I would have jumped on that when I was a PA, because I started out doing internships too for free. So took any opportunity you can get. But Tony, do you want to start?
Yeah, let's do an intro, and then we'll get into your whole story and everything.
Yeah, sounds good, Tony.
Yeah, this is Open Walkie, and I'm Tony, and here with Canfield.
Hey.
We're here with Jack Cannon, Emmy-winning director, which is a huge accomplishment. So congrats.
Thank you.
Father, grandfather, husband.
You're supposed to reverse the order of those, Tony. You're supposed to be husband,
I know, but
father, grandfather, then Emmy-winning director.
Well, I'm sorry. We could do a redo.
That's all right. That's all right.
But yeah, tell us more about how you got into it. Like, you can start as far back as you want, go to childhood if you want. It's like I love the stories of people. So,
well, it's funny. My childhood is I think different than probably most kids that grew up in the U.S. I grew up overseas. My dad worked for the CIA, so I was born in Finland, grew up in Germany and Turkey, and then we came to Huntington Beach, California. Was his last post where he would watch Russian ships going in and out of Long Beach. So like his career just kind of ringed the Soviet Union until towards the end of his career when we ended up back in the US. So I'd been to the US, and both my parents are American. I mean, we spoke English growing up and all that. It wasn't like I was some Finnish kid who immigrated here. I'm an American citizen, and my family's all American, but I grew up overseas. I wasn't living in the United States. I wasn't living certainly in LA or California or New York or any of the production hubs that existed. So my kind of entrance into the world of entertainment really happened starting in high school. We'd film the football games on Friday nights, and it was the nerdy AV club. I was literally the dude pushing the projector into the room and setting up projectors, and that kind of morphed into, like, we had a 3-camera setup for the football games, a high and wide on the top of the bleachers and one down on each end of the end zones, and we'd all rotate through. I don't remember if we live switched it. We must have, because we had 3 cameras. High school was a long time ago for me. So, but I started that.
Do you want to give us some years? You don't have to say the exact year, but just to give us a time frame, because we want to kind of understand your whole career too.
Yeah. No, we moved to the United States in 76. I started high school in 78. So like late 70s, early 80s. So whatever the technology was at that time, which was pretty archaic.
Beta? Was it beta? VHS?
Oh, dude. No, way before.
Yeah.
Like some weird.
VHS wasn't really.
VHS was.
It was later on.
Right.
I mean, this is how old I am. When I was telling you about that experience at Entertainment Tonight, the sound recorders were recording on 3/4-inch decks.
You were carrying a deck.
Carrying a deck around.
They were carrying a deck with like the 2 little audio inputs right on the deck. So that's how old that stuff was. So before that, I don't even know what the cameras were, but started off doing that. And then my sister is 2 years older than me, and she was going to Pepperdine University in Malibu. And we were living in, like I said, Huntington Beach at the time. And I went up to go visit her, and they had like a legit studio. I mean, they did news broadcast, and I saw that and I was like, oh, well, this is cool. Like, I didn't know you could go to school for this. I thought you had to go to school for like English lit or sociology or whatever the stuff people go to school for. I didn't know you could go to school for that. Like, that's cool. So I applied a couple years later and ended up getting accepted there. And, it was a very hands-on program. And it was kind of funny because there was Pepperdine, and then there was all the other schools, in USC being kind of the one that everybody knows of because of the graduates that come from USC. But it was funny because I've talked to people that went to the USC Film School the same time I was going to Pepperdine. And as a freshman, we were like shooting stuff. We like had our hands on the cameras. We'd shoot for like the news magazine show, or you could operate a PED camera in the newsroom for the nightly newscast. And they were like, we can't do that till we're seniors. And so I think, how I ended up there was kind of like happenstance, but the fact that I could be hands-on with gear, I think really formed a lot of kind of where I went and where I'm at now, because early on, you're out in the field with a camera and thinking, shit, can feels a little dark on this side. If I hold up this white t-shirt that I've got, I can fill them in a little bit and give them a little bit of fill light and it looks better. And that's what you do. And I was doing that as a freshman in college and really learning kind of as you go. Obviously, there were instructors and teachers and mentors and all of that, but kind of hands-on. And I went to college from 82 to 86. Yeah, I graduated in 86. And just kind of and had an internship, like I said, at Entertainment Tonight, my last year of college. I had an internship though, like my sophomore year. I was one of those guys that like I had fun in college, but I also was driving to Burbank at like 6 a.m. every Saturday morning for an internship, you know, at a stage show at NBC Saturday mornings because we shot on Saturdays, and so while everybody was sleeping off their hangovers, I was like driving down the Ventura Freeway into Burbank. Putting in the work.
What was the process of like getting that internship at Entertainment Tonight?
You know, the thing I always tell people is I think the best thing about a college or a trade school or anything is the entree you have. And this was a thing, they had literally a cork board outside of the TV studio and people would post internships. And I, you know, me being me, I took down that card so nobody else could apply for it.
That's amazing.
Took it back to my dorm room, called up and said, hey, I saw this internship. I'd like to, you know, come down and apply. And they were like, yeah, no one else has called about it. I was like, oh, that's shocking. You know, I was up on the board. How weird. And so I got the internship, and it was a show called Fantasy. And it's kind of funny how like the full circle of TV. So this was a stage show, and people would write in and say, my fantasy is to go panning for gold up in the Sierra foothills. And they would arrange for you to go up, and then they'd shoot it, and then they'd play the clip, and the person would come out and say, oh, I found gold or whatever. You know, my fantasy is to be reunited with my long lost brother, and they'd reunite him. And so it was essentially a reality show before they called it reality. It just had two hosts that would introduce these reality things, but they didn't call it reality. They called it a variety show. Mm-hmm. But that's how I got the internship. I just applied and made sure no one else could apply because I'm not that smart. So I had to beat the competition.
You're super smart.
I mean, that would never fly now with all the social media and all the crazy posts, but can't get away with that now. But
so much shit is different now, Tony. It's like I'm glad I did it when I did it because, you know, I'm not real savvy with the social media, and you can see anybody else probably would have cleaned up their background. I haven't done that.
Sorry. I mean, we're not doing anything for that, you know, like we're not cleaning up our backgrounds or anything. So
yeah.
It is what it is. I got a question, Jack. So when you were growing up, did you have like a strong affinity for film and TV? And then you mentioned you didn't. Okay, so no,
not at all, not at all. I mean, I'm not one of those nerds like when people go, favorite movie. I'm like, Air, the Michael Jordan story that I just saw last week. Like that's my favorite. You know, I don't have that cinema nerd TV thing. That was never my world. I mean, like I said, growing up overseas and then moving to Huntington Beach, California, when you're I don't know, 13-year-old, you're kind of into surfing and soccer and stuff like that. It wasn't a hub for cinema, you know, or TV. So I definitely, hang on, I have to turn off this Roomba, sorry.
The vacuum?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like, it's not awesome. It's a pain in the ass. No, so I don't have that background. I don't have that kind of film school, you know, mentality of like, you know, like Alan Thorogood, that Tony Campfield and I both know him. He was a kid who was an AC and is now a shooter. Yeah. He's a film nerd.
Like 100%. Yeah.
The dude shows up on set with like a little whatever camera, and he's like, I'm going to go shoot some B-roll on my day off. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to sleep and do laundry on my day off, but you can go out and shoot on your day off if you want to. So no, I never had that kind of background other than just starting in college with like literally hands on a camera. Then it was VHS and beta and, you know, and that kind of stuff. But that's kind of where it started for me.
That's super interesting because I definitely had more of a art background, but similar to you, I got to college and then, you know, I was a communications major and I was like, oh, wait, there's a media department. Let me just peek my head in there. And I'm like, this is more fun. I'm going to do this. So it's like, it's all circumstance and kind of taking advantage of what's put in front of you. So that's it. That's just interesting because everyone kind of has a different answer. Some people will say, oh no, I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to be in entertainment. I always wanted,
Yeah, mine was similar to Canfield's. It's like I was a communications major too. And it was just kind of like I just took a couple little film classes, was like, oh, whatever. And then outside of, you know, after college, it was like I just fell into it, started PAing. I didn't even know what a PA was. I always tell people I showed up to the set this show called Clean House, and I showed up to set with like khaki pants on and like a collared shirt. I had no clue what was going on. And everyone was like, dude, this guy's new. And it's, you know, after that, I just ran from there.
Yeah. I think the one thing that sits in my mind from college and kind of getting started in the business that really set the tone for me, we had this old agent. He like represented like Carol Burnett and James Garner. And like he was old school, crusty, hard-nosed. And the first day in school, he writes down on the board, show business. And he underlined business. He tapped on the board. He's like, this, and his class was called Introduction to Show Business. And his whole point was you're going into business. You're not going into art. You're not going into, you know, creative, you know, wanderlust. You're going into business. And if you make a product and people buy a ticket to see it, you're successful. If they don't buy a ticket and don't see it, you failed. And he was hardcore. So things like film theory and lighting and lens choices and all that stuff that is very important was kind of secondary to my knowledge base, which was like, you're going into business, know your shit, do your job, show up on time, get the job done, do it right, and then collect a paycheck. So art was kind of secondary to that. You know, his class was not called Introduction to Show Art.
Right.
It was called Show Business. And so I've always kind of kept that mentality in everything I've done. I mean, Tony, like you said, showing up as a PA, at least you showed up dressed up instead of in like cut off shorts and a tank top and flip flops.
Yeah.
I've seen that. You know, when PAs show up like that, you're kind of like, dude, are you here to work or are you here to get a suntan?
This was also close to like 20 years ago. And that's, you know, it's different than kids nowadays. That's what we did.
Yeah. I did something similar to an internship. I way overdressed. And that's, again, because I grew up in a business-oriented household and me trying to do this, I still get questioned what I do for a living by my family, but like, you know, that was the professional thing to do. But Jack, I really like how you phrase that because I think I'm a creative person too, but I think I have a business hat that some people don't have. And I think just the way you phrase that, if newer people just heard those couple sentences, it might change your perspective on everything, really. Be creative, but this is a business, and you show up and you're getting paid to do something, and the outcome and the goal is for someone to make money, the production company, whoever, the studio.
Yeah, I think that needs to be taught a lot more too, is to teach people more about that it is a business, you know, and it's not just about the creativeness that you bring, you know, it's like you have to have that well balanced, and you know, we all get lost in that at some point.
Yeah. It's easy to get sucked into the kind of the allure of the lighting and the lenses and the actors and the actresses and the writing and the script, and you're like, oh shit, I got to pay rent this month.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah. So through a lot of the stuff, you traveled all over the country, right? Like, where else have you traveled? Like, what's some of the best locations you've been to for, like, what work's brought you?
The most memorable one was shooting in Russia. We were doing the behind the scenes of a Harrison Ford movie, a Russian submarine movie. And this was a long time ago. In fact, it was 20 years ago. And Moscow at that time was kind of like the Wild West. The capitalism was just starting. There was nobody knew the term oligarch yet, but there were definitely these guys, that were businessmen with bodyguards. And shooting there was really cool. I mean, it's an amazing city, and it was cool to see a big Harrison Ford feature film, and the workings of that, and like all that goes into that. It was kind of cool. But it's funny. I just had a great shoot in Orlando, and what made it great was this one younger kid who was a PA. Wants to move up to an AC and wants to shoot and wants to move into that direction. And I told him, I said, hey, I was going to shoot this drone shot, because a lot of times I'll bring my drone and shoot stuff with it just before I go into work or on my day off or whatever. And he's like, oh, I have a FPV drone. And I said, that would be better for what I want to do. And I said, the bummer is we got to shoot it at 6 a.m. in the lobby. And this was the day after we wrapped, and everybody knows the wrap parties and blah, blah, blah. So I told him, I said, so if you want to do it, I'm going to be in the lobby at 6 a.m. And it'd be cool if you could do it, and you could put on your resume drone operator for Jersey Shore. Yep. If this works. And I'm thinking, the guy's not going to show up. He's going to go to the wrap party. He's going to oversleep. I'll do it myself. Sure enough, there he was, 6 a.m., bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go. He said, he goes, yeah, I left the wrap party early last night because I wanted to get a good night's sleep. And so the two contrasts of that, like a big Harrison Ford feature film in Moscow to like shooting in the lobby of this hotel in Orlando, they're both impactful, because I'm like, cool, this was me. I was that guy early in the morning, showing up, doing shit when everybody else was partying and out doing their thing. And this guy is here and he's doing it. And it made me think, this is good. There's still young people out there that are gonna work their way up and do good things and be successful in the business. And there's a lot that aren't.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see one guy who is going to be successful and be good at it.
Yeah.
And so, but the travels themselves, to be honest, Tony, it's just part of the deal now for me. The travel, like whether it's Orlando or Moscow, that's the same to me. It's a airport, it's a hotel, it's a pass man, it's the same shit, different city. And yeah, you get a few of the little exotic looks at cool places, and all that. But as you can kind of tell, I'm all about the work. I'm just all about the work. And it's one thing actually that I'm trying to change now a little bit. I used to hang out in the crew room a lot more, now as Canfield knows, maybe I'll pop in there for a minute or two and say hey to everybody. And then I was like, oh, back to the booth,
you're busy though. You're doing the work. Sometimes you gotta stay separated from what's going on in the tech room, so you can just concentrate on the monitors. Like I do get that, but I'm sure you miss that too. So
yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I think, and part of the reason Canfield, again, getting back to when we first talked about the strike and the balance of work and all that stuff, I think kind of what's been circling around the conversations are this work-life balance and fair pay and all that stuff that, oddly enough, I was an ENG sound mixer on a show called Rescue 911 when reality started way back when, which I forgot how long ago it was, but it was I think the first writer strike, or at least the first one of memory. I'm sure there were other ones.
Well, the previous one was 2008, but I think there's one in the 90s as well.
prior to that, yeah.
94, 95, I want to say.
That would have been about that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, we were talking about the same stuff. How do we balance work life and hours, and we should be getting paid more, and and the writers were having their same issues then. Granted, back then it was with 4 networks. Now it's with 4 networks and 50 different streamers. But finding that balance, I think, a little bit is important. And the strike is obviously, it's more related to residual and streaming payment and all that stuff. But I think along with that is a little bit of this work-life balance that unfortunately we'll probably never resolve, but at least we try to keep the scales a little bit more in check and way out of balance, try to bring them a little bit more into balance.
I feel like that balance will be found the more that people that have been crew for years move into a network position, because I feel like a lot of network people have never worked on set. So they look at it and they're like, oh, they're not doing any, that's not important, It's like, so when it comes back to the whole business aspect of it, the more people learn about the crew needing to learn more about business, I feel like that's the aspect that we all miss, and which is why strikes keep happening and nothing's being done. It's because you don't have that many people that have actually worked as a PA starting out on a crew set, taking out trash and getting people lunch. Like they didn't start from there. Some probably did, but the majority, it's not so much. It's like they're on set doing the jobs. So.
Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect. Even the other day, I just finished a documentary for Peacock, and I honestly liked everyone top to bottom that was on it, even the network people that came by. But on the last day, it was when the writer's strike started, and we were sitting at lunch, and I should probably be careful how much I tell this, but like one of the network executives was like, I just closed a deal at 11:59 Pacific time, because the strike started at midnight, and he was kind of into the other executive. And then I kind of was just like eating a sandwich, just like, okay, like this is why these things happen, because you're literally sitting on set with a bunch of crew in front of you. You're bragging that you closed the deal right before
a strike.
Right before a strike. It's like there's a huge disconnect. And then I kind of poked them a little bit. They started talking about Conan. I didn't hear how the conversation came up, but I remember in the last strike, Conan was like very, very cooperative and very respectful to his crew. I believe he even paid some of his crew that was on his show out of his own pocket. And since the writers couldn't write his material, he kind of just, freestyled his show just to keep some people employed that he can keep employed. But then he respected the writers that were striking. And it's like, that's a leader. Like, that's someone that's a really good leader, that you're in a high position, you're an executive on the show, you're the star of the show, but you're respecting, a labor movement or some goals that some crew are trying to achieve. And it's like, clearly the people that I was sitting in the lunchroom with were just not really there.
Yeah. It's a shame, because I just, like I said, I made that reference to that movie Air. My wife and I went to go see that a week ago.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. I mean, and as I walked out of that movie theater, I thought, some person sat down with a pen and paper or laptop and wrote those words and crafted this story. And it was amazing. I mean, it was so well done and such a well told story. And and then I've been watching that series, The Diplomat, on Netflix, and I'm just like baffled by like how someone can say, let's go, and just start typing and creating these stories. And those people should be rewarded for the work that they're creating, and rewarded fairly, and rewarded, because they are, without them, there would be nothing.
Yeah.
And you could say the same thing about the craft service person, that without them, the crew wouldn't have snacks on set, they wouldn't eat. and it's equally as valuable. But the craft service person is there because the writer crafted the script to get it all started. And those two in particular, The Diplomat and Air, I walked out of there going, damn, those are well-written stories. And if ever there were people that were, or if there were pieces of work that would kind of illustrate why writers are striking and why they feel like they need to be rewarded, those are certainly two of them. But there's hundreds of great stories out there.
I think that's the difference between people that just watch movies and TV shows and then other people that have worked on them and have, been behind the scenes and sees what's going on, because, you have those writers and, you look at the actors on movies and stuff and everyone, and they're getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. And, you can tell the difference between a great actor and a not so great actor. So their job is definitely a craft and a skill in its own. But then again, it's like they're just mouthing the words that they're reading from someone who came up with that character. So it's like they're just embodying someone else's vision. So without that, it's like, well, it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are, because if the words aren't there, then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So it's, people don't realize that stuff and how important the certain positions are.
Yeah. You need the skeleton to make the whole film or TV show work. And if there's not good bones, the writing's everything. I mean, I'll argue the cinematography is a lot too, but that gets inspired originally by the words that were on the paper. Mm-hmm. If I read a script, I can picture visually, if the words are good, I can picture visually how it could potentially look. So,
well, it's a collaborative effort. Like the words mixed with the images can make something super powerful, or it can make something terrible,
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Jack, you want to circle back? I want to hear more about the quest, because I saw that you won the Emmy and I was super happy to hear that. And then I watched the trailer because you said that you were pretty proud of the trailer too. And I thought it was really cool. And I hadn't seen it until a couple of days ago. So if you wanted to maybe tell people about that or introduce that.
Yeah, and sure. Talk about how the working on a hybrid show too, because it's a hybrid of reality and scripted, right? And so
exactly, yeah. So it started off. We did the show about 5 or 6 years ago for ABC, and it was it was still the same format. These reality contestants would kind of enter into this medieval world and interact with actors, but it was older. It was mid-20s to mid-30s kind of people. And it was an expensive show to do. Obviously, you've got costuming, and we shot it at a castle in Austria. So it was, a lot of on-location fees. And the show was great. It was really, really cool, but it was very expensive. And again, getting back to the business side of it, it costs this much. You got to do this much to make it worthwhile. Well, we did this much, and they said, so it's not successful. Doesn't mean it wasn't a good show, just means it wasn't financially viable. So time goes by, and one of the executive producers was at Disney pitching a Disney show, and the Disney exec said to him, he said, do you think you could do that show, The Quest, but with kids, for Disney kids, age 12 to 14-ish? And he said, yeah, absolutely, we could do that, And so it was reborn for Disney Plus with these kids, and same format, same kind of idea. They would enter this medieval world. But now we couldn't go to Austria because of COVID. So we found a winery up in Napa Valley that was a castle and was closed because of COVID, but we could still shoot there. He couldn't allow any public into there, but we could go in there as a private company. So we found this location and we shot there. And it was a great experience. We kind of, had a lot of deja vu moments, like, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember this. But I think we upped the production value quite a bit. The costuming and hair, which also won an Emmy Award for best costumes and best hair, was mind-blowing. I mean, I would encourage anybody watching the podcast, just check out the first episode. I mean, it's different than anything you'll see in the world of reality. And it was was a great experience. It was hard, but hard in different ways than, say, like shooting Jersey Shore is hard. You've got way more departments to work with. We had special effects and props and fight sequences and costuming, and the poor sound guys. I mean, they're used to running their hands up and putting a lav on a guy's t-shirt and saying, "I'm good." Well, now this girl is in this corset with this cape, and they were like, "Okay, we need to be down at the wardrobe trailer as they're getting dressed to get mics on." So they had their issues, and we had the edict to kind of up the game a little bit as far as the look and the style of it. And although I really don't like the term, we wanted to make it more cinematic. And my feeling is, if you want to make something cinematic, then make a fucking movie. This is a TV show.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I get turned off by that word when I hear it in the context of a TV show, because I think it does a disservice to the TV show and to people that make movies. It's like, there's got to be a better term than calling it cinematic. But anyways, we did elevate the look of it. I think we made it really cool. We shot a lot at night. We had a huge special effects team that had tubes of smoke throughout the forest, and it was really cool. And when the Emmy nominations came out, it was kind of funny because, again, getting back to the business side of it, I'm like, in business, you don't get awards for doing a good job. You do a good job and you get your paycheck, and that's that. And you maybe get an end of year bonus, but you don't get a little statue, And so I was kind of poo-pooing it, like, plus we're not going to win. We're up against Sesame Street. Like, right. Who's not going to vote for Sesame Street in the children's reality category? Like, they're a shoo-in, right? They've won the last however many years they've been nominated. But we went, and in kind of typical TV nerd fashion, I'm watching the production and the jib and the handheld guys and the Steadicam. And I noticed that the Steadicam guy is the reaction guy. Whenever they're doing the nomination package, he'll frame up down on the winners. And we were the last category, by the way. They saved directing for the last category of the night. And so the show's coming on, and then the hair and makeup team, they were like 4 or 5 categories from the end. And I noticed during the little clip package, he's kind of listening in his ear, and then he frames up on the hair and makeup team. And I'm like, and then they're announced as the winners. I'm like, yeah, he's the reaction guy. And so it gets to our category, and during the clip package, as the clip is playing, he's listening, and he pans up to where we're seated. And I look over to my wife. I said, "We're going to win." Kind of looks at me. She's like, "You've been saying you're not going to win for the past month. Like, why do you think you're going to win?" And then they announced us as the winner. And I told her afterwards, I said, "You just got to watch the reaction guy. Like, he's the tell,
Yeah, watch who's shooting it,
Yeah. So it was cool to get recognized. I mean, again, I'm like one cog in the wheel. So it's a little weird to be accepting an award for all of those people that work so hard to make it happen. And you can only thank so many in the 45 seconds that you have to do it. But it was neat to be recognized. And I think probably the most telling thing that I remember is afterwards, my wife said, she goes, "You didn't win for this show tonight. You won because you put in 30 years of hard work to get to this point tonight. That's why you won." And it kind of really stuck with me as like, yeah, I guess you're right. It's like, it did seem to be kind of a recognition of just a dude who showed up with a tripod at the red carpet to now of like, if you put in the hard work and you're not an asshole, you could do all right,
And you have a supportive wife like that can make sense of situations, kind of put it into a better perspective.
Yeah. Well, we've been together for 19 years. So she's seen the past, 20 years of stuff going on. So she gets it, even though she's not part of the business, she gets it. That's for important.
Sure. That's a good message though, because part of this podcast and why I joined it Tony created it, by the way, is that we hear the stories, but then also we try to give like a little feedback because, you know, when we were PAs and we were starting out and no one was giving us advice, and when I was in AC and people would throw bricks at me and tell me to change the camera, you know, it's like
kind of like what you do now.
Kind of. But it's good to give a little pebbles back to the people that are just starting out, little nuggets of information, I think.
Well, I was shooting on Project Runway once, and a few years back, and when we actually started this before, like, you know, we had done this as just like a hobby fun thing for a little bit, like, which it is now, but didn't really promote it or anything. And, you know, a PA came up to me and was like, "Oh, dude, you're Tony, like, you know, we listen to Open Walkie all the time." And one of them was like, "Yeah, dude, like, I almost quit. And then I listened to a bunch of your episodes, and I was listening to directors and showrunners and camera ops and just, you know, all people in positions that, you know, I wanted to be in." And he was like, it kind of like, it helped me out knowing that, like, yeah, these people were doing the same bullshit shit that I'm doing now, you know, and just stick with it and you can move. And it's like to hear those stories, I think that's a great learning ability, to just listen to other people, listen to their backstories, and you can learn a lot from just listening to an hour of somebody talk about how they started and what they do with it. So
yeah, I agree. No, I think it's really important to do this because our business doesn't have, you know, a mentorship program. It doesn't have a PA 101 class. You know, it doesn't have, I mean, I thank God for this guy, Bill Robinson. He was the agent I was telling you about who taught this class. He recently passed away about a year or two ago. You know, you need someone like that in your life to say, here's the deal. Here's how it's going to work. You know, and his whole thing was, you know, he also didn't come from a showbiz background. He didn't have relatives in the business. He just worked hard. You know, he worked hard. He paid attention. He put in the work, and that's why he got to where he was. Where he ended up like the vice president of ICM or something, one of the big three agencies at the time. He was a bigwig at the time, but he still came back to Pepperdine one night a week and taught this class for 4 hours. You know, to give people some information about how, hey, here's some information that might help you succeed in the business. To do okay, you know, and it was funny because, you know, I brought up the business aspect of what he did. We did have to do some intellectual stuff. You know, we did have to do like a book report. He gave us a book, and one guy in the class wrote a song and performed about why he didn't want to do the book report, and he got an A.
That's funny.
And this teacher said, you know, look, I know I've harped on the business thing, but creativity is important. And this was creative. He was the only one in this entire class who took a different approach than all of you knuckleheads who put pen to paper and did a book report on the book. This guy did something different, and that can be rewarded too. Mm-hmm. You know, it's risky.
Right.
I could have given him an F and said, you failed. You didn't do a book report. He goes, but this business does reward creativity. It does reward people who think outside the box a little bit. It does reward people who show up a little early and stay a little late, you know, and if you don't know that, you don't know that, you know? And so for young people, and it's funny, both you guys mentioned, you know, taking out the trash and doing the shit work and doing all that and getting coffee. I always laugh when PAs say to me, "Oh, you did that?" Yeah. And I feel like saying, "No, man, I just showed up and started directing on the first day, and I've been here ever since, just directing." You know, it's like, I did that. So did he. So did she. So did he. So did she. So did he. They all did.
But I mean, nobody really tells them that. It's like you look, you walk on the set, and you're like, "Oh shit! Like, how do you get to that spot?" Nobody knows. It's just, you know, put in the time, like learn. Take those days off and be like, hey, you know, if someone's offering to learn, come in.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Especially now, just with social media and like the immediate gratification. Everyone's life looks better than it is, and it's like then you get young kids that really think that. They're like, oh, he's a director on the call sheet. He's always been a director, like, because I saw it on his profile. It's like, no, everyone started somewhere. I mean, you know, maybe occasionally you get someone that was handed a job, but I honestly have never really met anyone like that.
My close circle of friends from college, 5 or 6 dudes, every single one of them started off low man on a totem pole, and whatever path they went down, they just moved up that path. You know, one guy wanted to be an agent, started in the mailroom at the agency, now he's vice president of the agency. One guy wanted to be a feature film director, started as an assistant to a director, getting coffee, driving him to set, yada, 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 and is now a big time feature film director. You know, a guy who was into production design, started off in the art department, painting sets and doing all the shit work and hammering nails, and is now a top production designer. So I don't know anyone who was just, you know, on a platter. Here you go, you're a production designer. Here you go, you're a vice president of an agency. Maybe those situations exist. I'm not aware of them. Every person that I know has worked their way up the ladder and gotten there through hard work, smarts, mentorship, little nuggets of information that have helped them along the way. The stuff kind of that we're talking about is good. But I'll tell you, all of them, I think the one key element is hard work. You know, it's just, I don't know how to do it without hard work. I mean, I'm a good director, but I'm sure there are great directors out there. I'm where I'm at because of hard work. You know, do I know my shit? Yeah, I know my shit. I'm pretty well versed in camera blocking and lenses and coverage and cutaway. You know, I know all that stuff. But I think the one thing that has gotten me to where I'm at is hard work. You know, I'm always early. That's why I was pissed when I logged on at 12:01. I'm like, God damn it. It started at noon and it's 12:01 and I should have my shit together. And like even 1 minute off like that to this day is a sign to me that I wasn't prepared and I wasn't ready, you know, and I look at that as a fuck up. And people should know, hey, if your call time's 11, show up at 10:45, man.
Yep. I'm always that, like,
I'm
early.
Yeah. I'm the same exact way. That's one of my biggest anxieties, actually, being late. So yeah. I'm always, even like I said, for example, say my call time's noon, I'll walk by the tech room at 11:30, see who's in there. Okay, all right, you know, just peek around, go get another coffee, then circle back around. And I noticed that too. If I'm training in AC or if I'm just noticing other people in the camera department, I'm always like, who's showing up early? Who's showing up late? Like, I'm like, you can't show up late. Like there's a time.
Well, I feel like, especially as an operator, it's like, I would love to show up early just so I can set my stuff down, make sure my camera's all set the way that I want it, do everything nice, and then go get a coffee, chill for a second, because you're going to be handheld for a while. You know, you're going to be out there, like doing physical work for a while. So get yourself set. And like he said, with the anxiety, it's like, that's another reason. It's like, if I think I'm going to be a little bit late, my anxiety goes off the charts, and then I'm like stressed for a little bit. So it's like, it's a whole thing that people need to find their own little way to do it. But showing up early is the first stop. Get in there and just settle in.
Well, and it's funny though, how many people don't get that? Because I just did a show in Atlanta, and unfortunately the edict was you have to use Atlanta locals because Atlanta has a huge talent pool and yada, yada, yada. And this one camera operator, if our call time was say 11 o'clock, every day at 11 o'clock, he'd come like literally from his car and like hop in the van at like 11. And one day I said to him, I said, hey man, is there a problem with getting here on time? Like, do you have a kid you need to get to school? Is there a shared car thing? Is there something we can do to help you out to get here? Because we were based out of the hotel. I said, so 11 means like in the crew room doing your stuff at 11, like not hopping in the van as we're like leaving at like 10 minutes after 11 or 11:15. And he goes, no, there's no problem. He goes, I'm on time. And I said, no, you're not. He goes, well, I wait till I see you walk out the door, Jack, at 11. And then I know that everybody's ready and we hop in the van. And I said, well, you should know that when I walk out the door at 11, I've spent 30 minutes downstairs getting my walkie on, doing the call sheet, talking to the crew about what's going on, being ready to go. So, I know what it was. The call time was 10:30 and he would show up at 11 because he knew we had a 30-minute window to get his gear and get everything ready. And he would just say, he had every excuse. Oh, the AC gets the gear ready. Oh, I don't need to go over the call sheet. I can do that in the van. Like, he had all these excuses. And I just said to him, I said, you just don't get it. Like, if your call time is 10:30, be there at 10:30 in the room ready to go, not getting in the van at 11. Like, that's just, and this was an older guy. Like, he was not a young, new kid. Like, he was an older guy that should know better. And he didn't. And he just disagreed with my approach to it. So
he's a very like clock in, clock out mentality.
Yeah, but like not even on time mentality. Like it's one thing. I get if your call time's 10:30 and you come in at 10:30, like at least if you're there on time at 10:30. Yeah. Most people would show up at 10:15 and like you guys were saying, get a coffee, say, hey, bullshit a little bit about what's going on in life. Take that time to talk about non-work stuff because you're not on the clock. But at 10:30, get your shit together, get to work, But this guy didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
Be nice. I don't know. Not worry about being late.
It didn't work out so well for him. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
What's something that you would like love to work on now? Maybe not such an upcoming show, but like just something in general. Like, what's the kind of goal moving forward? Like something that you would want to get involved with?
I really like documentaries. That one reference that I gave you guys earlier about shooting that behind the scenes of the Harrison Ford thing, that was like a documentary on the movie and the story because it was based on a true Russian submarine disaster. So it was based on a true story, and we were interviewing survivors of it, and it was kind of a real documentary, kind of encircled by this Harrison.
You're talking about, right?
No. It's called K-19.
Oh yeah,
before Hunt for Red October. Cool movie. Catherine Bigelow was the director, so it was cool to watch her. This was cool. Before Hurt Locker, so seeing her do that and then seeing her success on Hurt Locker, I was like, oh, she's just a regular film director. She just won an Oscar. Like, that's cool. But doing documentary stuff is kind of a goal for me. It's just hard to find a story that you can latch onto because it doesn't pay very well. It takes a ton of time and it takes a lot of effort to get it to some place. And the realities of like working and needing to make a living kind of interrupt that quite often. Mm-hmm. So if I could do more documentary based stuff, and even when I say documentary, I mean like single camera, shooter, AC sound, producer kind of crew, like small, doing that kind of stuff, I think would be pretty cool to do. I enjoy the reality house stuff. It's my wheelhouse. It's what I'm good at. It's what I've done for a while. And I like doing that. But I would also like to kind of spread myself out a little bit. And even stuff like The Quest, this idea of immersive reality has kind of come in and out of fashion a little bit in the development world. I did a show called Kid Nation a while back, and they didn't call it immersive reality, but that's exactly what it was. We took these kids and put them in an old Western town The only difference was there were no actors. There was just the kids in the town, but it was transporting them to this old Western, way of life and old Western environment. So that idea of this immersive reality kind of comes in and out of vogue. And I wish it would stick, because it's really cool to do. And it's very challenging to do, for the obvious reasons. Like, all of a sudden these actors are like getting thrown a curveball by some kid, totally off script, totally with, no planning done, which happened a lot in the Quest. But we had great actors who had never done reality TV before at all, like had no exposure to it. So I did like a 1-day boot camp on like, here's how reality works. It's very different than what you guys are used to, very different. And I had
like the blocking and everything, just because they don't know where to look. And
and I told them, I said, be prepared for the unprepared.
Right.
And sure enough, one girl mentioned this princess's costume, about, wow, that's a beautiful, dress that you have. And the girl, totally in costume, says, why, yes, it is. You'll notice it doesn't have any tears in it like your pants, because she had the cool ripped jeans, like all the cool kids wear. And afterwards I said to her, I said, that was awesome. I said, you stayed in character and you threw it right back to her, of kind of putting her back in her place. Like, she was like, commenting on your clothes, you commented on hers, and let her know your shit is nicer than hers, but in character. And I said, that's it. That's all you got to do. And so it's that immersive reality stuff is really cool. Yeah. And as a director, it does challenge you with a lot more stuff, to do, which is fun. That makes it part of the growth and part of the challenge of doing more and learning a little bit more and working with much bigger departments. We had a candle burning on the set and it went out, and I was like, hey, does somebody have a lighter so I can light that candle? Don't do that on a union show.
Don't touch it.
Don't do that on a union show. I had my hand slapped several times, and I always explain to people, I said, you guys, I'm so sorry. I said, this big union scripted world is new to me. I said, I'm not doing it out of disrespect. It's just, I move much faster and we move much quicker in reality TV. I said, I know who smokes on my crew, and I will go to that person asking for a lighter, light the candle, it's lit, we're moving on.
Right.
I said, I now know that we need the production designer to sign off on it, the art director to call the prop maker to bring the lighter, who has to get the special effects guy to light it because it's a fire, who needs to notify the fire marshal because there's an open flame on set. I said, I get it. It's, and I don't mean that at all to be disrespectful to that.
You can't get mad at it. You can't get mad at it because it's a procedure, but it's just...
It's just different than the world I work in on a daily basis, where, like I said, I know all the people who smoke on my set. I'll get their lighter, I'll light the candle, it's lit, we're moving on. Yeah. And this is just different than that. It's a different process. It's a different step to getting things done. And learning that and managing that was a good challenge for me. Yeah. And I'd like to do more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I worked on a hybrid show years ago for YouTuber Red when that was still going around. It was called Escape the Night, and it was a first season of it. And they had hired all scripted people, and it was like a whole thing. I got called into Tech Soup. A friend of mine was like, "We need you to come in." They don't know anything about reality. They don't know anything about like sending cameras out all over the place with wireless signals. Come in, and I had to revamp a whole thing. I actually helped build some wireless set with some guy in his garage in California. Wow. Somewhere. I went to go see what he was doing. It was a crazy setup. But after, a lot of people didn't even know what a tech supervisor was. They're like, what do you actually do? And I had to explain it, run it through. But I mean, it was a working curve for me and for them, for all that stuff, because all these scripted people had never done reality. And the DP at the point, he didn't know how to light for reality. Like, he was killing it. Like, he was a big commercial DP. Like, he killed every scene with the actors and everything. It was beautiful. But then when it came down to like, okay, they're going to be in these 5 rooms running around, he's like, oh, what? Where are they going to, where are they going to stand?
What are their marks?
Yeah, what are their marks? You mean I have to light it for just whatever? And like, yeah, so it was a shit show, but it turned out to be really fun. It was a really good experience.
Yeah.
I love those type of shows too.
I hope that stuff comes more in vogue and more popular. The bummer is it's expensive, because you are putting them into this world. So there's costuming and there's set design and there's all the stuff that doesn't exist on Jersey Shore. Jersey Shore, we rent a house and we take down pictures that aren't clearable and we put up pictures that are cleared, and we redress some bedding and some linens, and we bring in the cast and start shooting. That's it. There's no wardrobe. There's no art department. There's no, any of that stuff. And honestly, the audience doesn't care about that stuff when they watch Jersey Shore. They don't care if the wall's mauve or pink or white. Nope, they just want to see sound bites.
Yeah.
They just care about Nicole and Mike, getting into a fight about something crazy. And so it's interesting because those shows, and I brought up Rescue 911 a long time ago, that show came about because of the writer's strike, because we could take essentially an ENG crew. It was literally, there were no ACs, by the way, back then. It was just a cameraman and a sound man. The sound man dealt with batteries and tapes at the time, and we lit everything. There was no LD or gaffers or grips, and so this 2-person crew could go out and do essentially a network show. It was on CBS at the time, a network show, and all the money went to William Shatner because he did the wraparounds. And he'd say, this story comes to us from Kansas City when a deaf mom, had to call 911 and couldn't because she couldn't speak, or she couldn't hear the 911 operator. So, here's the story. And it would be a 6 or 7 minute episode shot by 2 people, where we didn't paint walls. We didn't art direct. In fact, back then, I don't even know that we cleared stuff. If there was like a painting or a picture behind you there, Tony, we just said, well, they'll blur it or we'll have to pay for it. Like, we never went in and took it down and said, oh, we need to clear that picture. We just went and shot, and they were like 2-day shoots, and that's why reality came along in the way that it did, where there was no art department, there was no grips and electrics, there was no prop masters, there was nothing. We just 2 dudes, a camera guy and a sound guy, shot it. And in a weird way, that's why reality is where it is. And in some cases, it's been elevated to more, and hybrids and things like that have come around. Stage shows like Project Runway, you mentioned, those big, elaborate stage sets evolved out of that, because they're like, well, we can't just show people sewing at a thing and making dresses and saying, here you go. We need a runway and we need lights and it needs to look like a fashion show and you need all that. So that all evolved out of that. But it all started with really like ENG 2-person crews shooting this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you've been in the industry for a pretty long time, so you've seen so many different changes and everything. And I mean, everything is constantly evolving and changing, but what do you think still needs to be kind of a big change in the industry?
To me, the strike is bringing up a lot of the business aspects and stuff. And I kind of told Canfield earlier, it's like the business side of things is a little above my pay grade and a little bit beyond my knowledge of what is what. But in my personal experience, like I look at Jersey Shore, and for the past 5-6 years that I've been doing it, I'm paid well and I feel fairly compensated for what I do. But then I see it on Paramount Plus, and it's the same show that I did. Paramount Plus is selling all new advertising, all new ads for this show. I don't see a dime from that. And I contacted the DGA and I said, really? Like, we don't have anything in place? And they said, no, that's what we're bargaining for.
Your contract's up next. I said, your DGA contract is up next. Streaming residuals is a big contention point for IATSE, for DGA, for the WGA. And the ball got dropped a little too early. So it's a thing.
It's for sure a thing. And part of me is like, I'm kind of torn, to be honest. Like, well, I was paid for the job and I was paid fairly and I've been paid well for it. If they have that product, they bought it and paid for it and they own it. If they can sell it again a second time, I'm not Paramount. I didn't put out the money and take a chance on a show and invest my capital in that to take that risk. Mm-hmm. I'm just a guy. So to be honest with you guys, I'm really torn. Now, that being said, when you look at like the median pay for like WGA members is below the poverty line or something. And I'm speaking, I know, a little hypothetically here. I don't know if it's literally below the poverty line, but it's a pretty low number. You're like, well, I hope the dude that wrote Air is getting more than that, because that was an amazing movie, you know. And there's probably that disparity. The guy who wrote Air, his payroll is probably way up here. A person struggling is probably way down here. And how that median can be made better, I don't know, you know. And so our business is going to constantly evolve and shape and move, and it has been since I've been involved, and it will be long after I'm gone. It will be constantly changing and shifting and morphing. And I think the important thing is to kind of try to negotiate for what is right and fair as it goes. And hopefully the owners of that property will say, yeah, I guess we could give some back, because we already made our money the first time it aired on MTV. We made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Now we're making more money when it's airing on Paramount Plus. Maybe we can give some of that back. But then I look at it too, it's like, well, I shouldn't be the only one entitled to it. What about the camera operators? Mm-hmm. What about the production managers who are working 14, 15, 16-hour days without any overtime? You know, should they be entitled to something back too? Yeah, I think they should be, you know. So, but how does that all wash out in the real nuts and bolts of it? That's, you know, the devil's in the details, right? It's like, how does that all come out? But that is, Tony, to answer your question, I think I don't know what the right buzzword is, financial equity or fairness or, you know, whatever the term is, but something to where, you know, a living wage isn't something you have to fight for, but is something that you get. Mm-hmm. Now, I say that as someone who's been in the business for 30 years, I make a good living. I have a very good quality of life, and I'm paid very well for what I do. So, you know, I want to make sure that everyone else is getting that too. Not at the level I'm at, because they haven't put in their 30 years yet. They haven't put in their time that I have, but something. Or when they do put in that 30 years, will they be getting something fair and equitable like what I feel I'm getting now?
Yep. I mean, I think residuals is also, that's a big thing to have discussed with a lot of different departments as well, because residuals is almost like a commission. You know, it's like, in a sense, it's like you might not be getting the pay that you want in that specific show, but it's like, okay, we'll give you a percentage of whatever the gross pay or however that works, you know, on that. So you're getting that passive income. So that might work out, you know, ridiculously well, or it just could be like, okay, you know, you get a few bucks here and there or whatever. So depending on how well the show does, but that's kind of like, that's more of an incentive too, where it's like, okay, well, I've been on a lot of shows where people are just so sour about like, oh, I'm not getting paid this much money. And it's always people are talking about on their breaks about the money situation. But it's like, even if someone has like that type of incentive, like, okay, well, got paid shit right now, but if this show does well, we come back and we get a little bit of a passive income type thing from however well that's doing. Nothing crazy, but I mean, these networks are making millions of dollars. And even I read something about the CEOs, a post of CEOs making $30 million on all these different networks, and the writers were peanuts, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, so you look at that comparison, you're like, how does that even make sense? You know? So Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot.
There's an argument on both sides. There's logic to, both sides. Obviously, the capitalism of it, like you were saying, Jack, yes, a network funded the production. They took the risk financially.
Yeah.
Really makes sense. They should reap the benefits for the financial risk. Totally makes sense. But yeah, I think like maybe there is a residual sharing program or residual sharing situation that could work. I think if it was posed to me, and I'm just speaking for myself, I would be willing to potentially take a little bit of a lower day rate if I thought a show would be successful and I would share some of the profits.
Yeah.
But maybe some other people wouldn't do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just that it's preference and people too, but it brings up that crew morale, which is always, it's always a struggle in some shows. Some show doesn't need it at all. Everyone's happy, everyone loves it, and then some shows you're like, oh, crew morale is terrible, and it shows. Nobody, people complain, nobody wants to really do their job because they're getting, they're like, okay, well, what is this? I'm not getting my worth, but
yeah. And it's funny though. I mean, it's the one thing I have told younger people when they're starting off, it's like, if you have to do a job for X amount of dollars to feel like it's worth something, and that's a non-negotiable, like you got to get this to do it, I would say you're in the wrong business, because this number is going to go like this throughout time. It just is. And so if you can't be flexible with that, it's going to be a real struggle, to be happy. And, and in some cases it's $50 a day difference. And I've had conversations with people saying, really, you're going to make this a miserable experience for $50? And I get it. $50 is $50. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. Over a week, that's $250. That's, grocery money. Like I get it. But if you can separate it from the $50 figure and say, okay, well, I can make adjustments to make that work and be okay, that's a much better approach than saying, I am holding to this, and if you, production company XYZ, can't meet that, then I will not be in business with you. Well, guess what? That production company is going to say, okay, we'll try the next person who will be flexible and say, I can bring that number down to here. Okay, I'm cool with that. And moving on, So I get the crew morale part of it based on dollars. I've been in that situation too, where I've done projects where I'm like, man, this is less than I got paid for a smaller show. How is this possible? It just is.
Yeah.
It's the financial realities and logistics of our business are always in flux and always changing. I mean, Paramount just laid off 25% of their staff at MTV.
Yeah. They shut down
MTV News.
Shut down MTV News, which was like a staple for me growing up. I used to watch that more than real news, and so there's a bunch of people over there going, oh shit, I thought I was good. Right. I thought I was fine. It's like, no, nobody's fine. Nobody's safe. Nobody's ever set and good. There's always this shifting of stuff. And the more you can roll with that shift, the better off you're going to be throughout time, because it will change. I mean, and to your point, Canfield, with the DGA negotiation coming up, I feel like the DGA is 5, 6, 7 years behind the curve, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all of the unions are a little bit behind with those negotiations.
It's not new media.
Yeah,
this whole thing of new media. There's nothing
not new media at all.
No, it's not. It's not. To your point though, that resonated with me, and you and I have had side conversations before, because I do sometimes personally get fixated on rates. Tony knows this. We've had negotiations with other shows together, and I think it's a hard concept for day workers to grasp sometimes, to not put like a monetary value on their day work. But you make a very strong point, and I totally agree with you, Jack, and it's taken me 20 years to probably learn it, is that you have to think of the bigger picture, and hopefully you're going like this and not like this.
Right.
But sometimes, you will come across a show and just be like, I'm not going to work for $500. Sorry. I mean, your show idea is cool, but it's not, it's not happening.
Yeah. But, and you're totally right. And it's up to that each individual. And it's funny that the guy who I was telling you about who did this drone thing through the hotel lobby at 6 a.m., he was called to be a PA on the show. And he called me. He's like, Jack, I really want to AC. I've been ACing. He lives in North Carolina. He's like, I've been ACing in North Carolina. I really don't want to do a PA gig. And I told him, I said, do what is right for you. I said, but I guarantee you, if you show up on set in Orlando, you will have opportunities that don't exist sitting on your ass on your couch in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Will you be getting coffee for people and taking out trash? Yes, you will. Will you also have opportunities that are going to pop up because somebody's going to twist an ankle? Somebody's going to have an emergency that they need to fly home for. Somebody's going to, whatever. And sure enough, I don't even remember what happened. An AC, I don't know. I honestly don't remember what happened. And I called up the production manager and I said, hey, bump up Eli. I need an AC this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I told him, I said, I told you.
Yep.
I told you.
That's
if you were
great. That's great advice. That's great advice that you have to put yourself in play even to have the opportunity. That's
When I worked on Ink Master, we needed more help in the camera department, and I was like, well, we have like 25 PAs because we got shuttled back and forth from Union Square to Newark, New Jersey. And so we had a bunch of drivers, but a lot of them just sat around, and I'm like, well, people would come up to me. I'm like, well, we need some help. I just need people to go grab some Apple boxes, like to do, and then we'll teach them as we go. So let me get a couple of PAs to work with me. But whenever you need them to drive, whenever you need them to do whatever, they're yours. The priority is to be a PA, but instead of sitting around, what are you involved with? Like, do you want to go work in art department? They could always use an extra hand, So we got that kind of implemented. And one kid, I got him out of being a PA, and he worked with me all the time. And then he got called to go drive the shuttle, and he would start complaining. Oh, they're making me drive. I'm like, yeah, because that's the deal we made, maybe next time,
job.
if you don't complain and you keep going, that's the thing that we talked about. Hey, this is what you got to do, but you can work with us the majority of the time when you're to go that. So it's like, you got to pick and choose, but we're, anything else you want to talk about real quick before we cut and get out of here? Any advice besides all the other good advice you've given us?
I just think like that example you just gave, Tony, it's like you wish that would come from like an EP or a production manager or a supervising producer to say, hey, camera department's struggling. We got 10 PAs over here that they can use for a few hours. Let's do that. But it might not come from them. The fact that you took the initiative to say, hey, here's something I can do to make my little world a little bit better and a little bit more productive and a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more, we're all in this together kind of mode. That's the attitude, and that's the belief that people need to have. And then the PA who says, this is awesome, man. I get to go help the camera department. Oh shit, I got to go drive the van. I'll do that too. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to come back and hang around those camera guys. Those are the people that are going to do more and succeed and do better. The guy who pisses and moans and sits in the van and goes, oh no, man, they're paying me to drive a van. That's all I'm doing. I probably won't hear from him in a couple of years in this business. He'll end up working in a bank or selling life insurance or something. I don't know. But, and that's the thing, that this business is not for everybody. It's for people that take initiative. It's for people that will go, okay, I'm in a shit show right now. How can I make it less of a shit show? I can get that PA over to help here. I can fix this problem over here. I can ask that production manager to try to get lunch on time just this one time because it's been late for the last 3 days. So I'm not going to be a dick about it, but I'm just going to politely say, hey man, this is important to us. Because a lot of people, they don't see that. they're sitting in their office and they've got 10 million other things that they're doing. And they're like, so what if lunch was 20 minutes late? It matters.
Mm-hmm.
It matters. And how you handle that, because it's never going to go right. It's like, the one thing, the one thing I can say is it's not going to go right.
Yep.
So how can I make it go better?
Right.
You know, how can I make less things bad and more things better? Because that's the job. It's never going to be perfect. My wife always gives me shit when I'm like, come back and I say, oh, I bitch about this, I bitch about that. She's like, so same as the last show, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, yeah, same as the last show, you know, same shit, same as the last show. And, you know, so you try to make it a little better. You try to take the initiative to make things a little bit better. And I think that's really the key, is like, we're all in it together. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. Try to have more good days than bad days, and try to be respectful of everyone's place. You know, it's like, I mean, you know, the other Jack on MTV, the line producer and EIC, the guy is just constantly dealing with shit. Just like homeowners, she says, oh, there's a scratch in my wall. And he's like, no, ma'am, I have a picture right here. There is no scratch. And she's trying to get a free paint job in her house. Yeah. He's dealing with that stuff. Meanwhile, you're thinking, hey man, I just need a water and a battery now. Like, because I'm fucking dehydrated and I'm about to run out of voltage. You know, we all have our shit that we're dealing with and trying to do. And you got to be respectful of everyone's place and everyone's stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the best advice for young people coming up, is like, you don't know that much. So learn as much as you can, show up a little early, stay a little late, work a little bit harder than everybody else, take down that, you know, card from the internship board so no one else can sign up for it.
Love that.
You'll be all right.
That was the best story.
Good. That's good.
You'll be all right, you know?
Great talking to you, Jack. I really liked all the info you shared. You gave really good advice.
Yeah,
great talking with you guys, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to catch up, Canfield, and nice talking with you, Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, hang on for a couple more minutes. We're going to cut, and then we'll just talk.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks so much.